Hey guys, my name is Ryan and welcome to HitScan. We have two major bits of news today actually that's come from the Blizzard forums talking about a nerf to Diva, as well as the big discussion about power creep that has got a lot of people upset, but a lot of people are still getting wrong when it comes to definitions and really what the hell is going on. We'll start with a Diva Buff. This was posted by Josh Snow yesterday, saying that they've actually been playing with a booster cooldown reduction recently. He says it sounds kind of intimidating on paper. They tested a 3-second cooldown on the Diva boosters, but in practice it hasn't been that crazy and allows Diva to play in the midfield more freely, which works well with the current 10 meter defense matrix range. Some version should make it to the next PTR cycle, which means that something is coming fairly soon with any luck. This tells us a couple of things. The first is that they are fully committed to this 10 meter defense matrix range that they have at the moment, an area of contention that the community want to see reverted back to the old defense matrix range, which was a little bit stronger. But the decrease in cooldown for her boosters means that she can be a lot more free to jump around. But as some people have quite rightly pointed out, it's effectively Winston's ultimate constantly. What is also interesting too is the fact that a lot of people have called out for nerfs this time instead of buffs, saying that it's got to a ridiculous point, and that goes into the next area of contention, which is power creep. Before we go over this post, I really need to define what power creep is, as I don't think we have done that on the channel before, but also I've seen some pretty bad takes, I suppose, on Twitter and Reddit and the like that completely miss the point on what this is. This isn't about when teams mirror match each other or anything like that. People are getting the definition of this completely wrong, and thus the whole conversation around it kind of gets nullified. But power creep, as defined from the Hearthstone wiki, is when new content, which in Overwatch's case could be new heroes or just new balance changes, slowly outstrip the power of previous alternatives, leading players to abandon previous options in favour for the latest and more powerful alternatives, resulting in an inevitable increase in power throughout the game. Here are a couple of examples from Hearthstone that kind of go over this area. The first is the Silverback Patriarch, which is a 3-mana 1/4 with Taunt. Was used quite a bit in the early days, but over time it was dwarfed by some of the new competition. The first being Squirming Tentacle, which is the exact same, but it's 2 extra damage, so it's a little bit better. Another example is Magma Rager, a 5/1 card which has been one of the worst cards in Hearthstone, but this card has gradually been overwritten, I suppose, by the Ice Rager, which is a 5/2. That's kind of the most basic example of power creep, but is it happening in Overwatch? The short answer is yes, it definitely is, but this is Josh No's response on the situation, talking about the state of power creep. Looking at GM plays for the current patch 1.43, Genji and Soldier 76 are 6th and 7th in terms of win rate for damage heroes. They're not doing quite as poorly as the general community sentiment would imply. Game balance, perceptions, opinions are often repeated and perpetuated enough that they start to become accepted as fact by many players. We should also remember that things like win rates and hero power effectiveness can fluctuate significantly depending on players' skill level. If someone would complain that Reaper is too strong and another say that Reaper is too weak, they could both be correct for their current skill level. When making balance changes, we typically look at the high-end potential of player skill for a hero, but also try to keep in mind if a given change would be a significant detriment to the overall gameplay experience in lower skill brackets, and attempt to find better solutions if so. This is the thing that's got people up in arms. I think in general being wary of extreme power creep is a valid and healthy concern if it's causing gameplay to become too wildly distorted from the core experience. I don't feel that we're currently anywhere close to that with the live game. I find it weird that he posted this shortly after saying that they're buffing Diva's mobility. Diva, a hero that has been considered very strong, even in the state that she is at the moment, was considered a must pick in the past. Now she can't keep up with the newer options, especially Sigma. That feels like it falls under the definition that I just went over. I mean, we kind of know how it's going to go with a Diva buff. She's going to come in, be really strong, not as strong as other heroes in the meta because the meta is so oppressive, I suppose. But then a huge nerf comes into Sigma, a Risa or whatever, the game drastically changes, Diva then becomes a must pick. In the exact same way that Baptiste has come out as well. Baptiste wasn't very good as a support, then he had his damage increased and his spread reduced, which made it better. He would have been fine then, you could play him if you want to, but he's not as good as the likes of Lucio Moira in the double barrier meta. Then the Breaking Barriers patch came in, it just lined up perfectly for Baptiste to become the best hero in the game. Red Shell put it this way as well. McCree and Soldier are on their best versions of the game and yet are still considered throw picks. And it also seems really weird that Josh now hasn't picked up on pick rate at all. If we go to Overbuff and say GM and then look at all of the heroes by win rate, you can see that Zarya is right at the top with a 60% win rate. This doesn't mean that Zarya is super strong. You can see her pick rate means that she hasn't really played all that much. Ashe as well has a really high pick rate, barely played. Sigma is one that you really should be looking at with the 6th highest win rate and the 3rd highest pick rate. That's an area that Blizzard should be looking at and going, yeah, this hero's too strong. Even Orisa and Baptiste are quite high up in the list. But you can't really look at heroes like Soldier here with a 0.5% pick rate in Overbuff. Bearing in mind that the pick rates and all that stuff in Overbuff aren't perfect, they give you general trends but not exact numbers. But he has quite a high win rate in comparison. That doesn't mean that Soldier's fine. I can understand why Blizzard may not want to buff him even more because he's already pretty ridiculous now in comparison to what he used to be, but I feel like this whole conversation on power creepers got so distorted and all-encompassing in different areas, it just feels like it doesn't mean anything anymore. This whole conversation around the dev posters frustrated me for a multitude of different ways. Of course, the main one is that it feels very out of touch, but the community's response to that post I feel is even worse. We were very critical of Blizzard in 2019 saying that they didn't communicate enough on stuff like this. Now they are. In fact, they're going above and beyond giving their perspective on an important topic such as power creep. When I say they, I don't mean Blizzard as a whole, I just mean Joshua Knows here. There's nothing to say that Jeff Kaplan or even Jeff Goodman agree with Josh Knows' response here. But the community is responding in a very harsh way, I feel. You know, said stuff like, Jesus Christ, this game is fucking doomed and all that jazz. Whilst it's very easy to feel like that, all it's going to do is force Blizzard away and they're not going to communicate with us on stuff like this anymore. I think it's fine to disagree here, but there's a difference between having a debate and disagreeing with somebody to just calling them out and saying that they're idiots and stuff. It's dismissive and it doesn't help Blizzard in any shape or form. So I'm disappointed with Blizzard's response here, but I'm disappointed with the community's response as well. Especially on a topic that I think a lot of people are just getting wrong anyway. Like I said, I think people are talking over each other here. But Baptiste is a shining example of why power creep is happening. Baptiste had his DPS buff increased, which wasn't really necessary. It would have only been necessary, as Miska said to me, if his healing was absolutely crap, but it wasn't. So now he does just as much DPS as some DPS heroes, and is also considered one of the best healers in the game, rather than having crap DPS but good healing, or vice versa, which would effectively make him Zenyatta. I don't know, the whole conversation is super frustrating, and we can all do better, I think, in 2020. Thanks for watching, take care, we'll see you next time.